Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Create and Consume, a podcast about what we make, watch, and buy in the era of digital content. I'm your host, Austen Tosone. The last few weeks have honestly been pretty go, go, go for me, and I feel personally, and maybe you can relate, like I need a minute to sit down, get my life together, and basically just catch my breath. So today I wanted to do a chatty end of summer catch up. And I think these are good episodes to sprinkle in from time to time when I know I can tell when I sit down for an episode outline if I have one particular thing that I know I could talk about for a long time, or if I have lots of little random things that are kind of just floating through my mind that I want to fill you in on. And I like the idea that I can share a bit more of my life through episodes like this and that we can truly have a chance to just catch up as if we were friends on the phone or on FaceTime. So I've got my iced coffee here, so go grab your favorite beverage, sit back, and let's catch up. Before we dive into today's catch up, though, let's talk about what we're creating and consuming this week. And you all need to let me know what you have been creating and consuming this week, too, if you don't mind. So come leave a comment on this episode on Spotify. You can leave a comment on Instagram or TikTok at Create and Consume Pod, or you can even send me an email. It's createandconsumepodcast@gmail.com to tell me what you're making, what you're watching, what you're doing, because I want to know. So, as far as what I've been creating in the past week, I actually had a brand deal that I am so beyond excited about. I have called it my dream partnership many times, and I think that's truly just because it is my dream partnership. Earlier this month, I got an email from YouTube asking if I wanted to participate in their new campaign called Watch Your Passion Pay Off. And it was basically a campaign all about why YouTube is a great platform for content creators, which, if you know me, this is like the doctrine of Austen. Okay, like this is something that I already create so much organic content about. I'm always telling people how much I love YouTube as a content creator, why I believe all content creators should be on YouTube, and what a truly great platform it is, not only to connect with your audience, but also to generate sustainable income for your business as a content creator, influencer, or entrepreneur. So, this could not have been a more perfect match. And even the deliverables, like the content that they asked me to create, are totally things that I could see myself creating just on my own day to day. And to me, that is truly what the mark of a great partnership is, when you love a brand or a product so much that you could see yourself organically creating tons of different content for them. And it just perfectly fit into what I'm already doing. So I shared that video last week. I actually had a few different deliverables for this campaign. The big one was a sit down YouTube video, like I often film on my other channel, Austen Tosone, if you're watching this podcast episode on YouTube. And the angle that I ended up creating that video around was basically about how YouTube changed my life and all of the very specific ways that I feel YouTube has totally outdone other platforms in terms of monetization options, creator support, creator programming, helping creators get in front of new audience members, and so much more. So I will leave a link to that video in the show notes in case you'd like to go give it a watch. And then I also created a short for YouTube, which was sort of like an abridged version of the longer video that I posted. And then I also created a reel and some stories over on Instagram talking about my journey as a YouTube content creator. And for the reel, I decided to film a bit more of like a typical lifestyle day in my life, shorter reel, where I basically just filmed myself filming a YouTube video, which is pretty meta. The amount of time I've spent filming myself or taking photos is kind of crazy. So it's pretty funny when you think about it. But I really just wanted to show a bit of the behind the scenes and how I get ready to film, what me setting up my equipment looks like, uploading the footage and all of that. So that is kind of the visual aspect there. And then I recorded a voiceover talking about my journey as a content creator, going all the way back, like starting with, back in my childhood. I used to take my parents' camcorder and I would make home movies with like my cousins or my friends. Taylor and I specifically, I remember we filmed Harry Potter 3.5. It is it is a highly questionable work of cinema with no real plot. Um, and Taylor's brother Jamie played like 8 different characters in it. Like one minute he was the villain, the next minute I think he was like the university or like was Hogwarts a university? I guess it was like the doctor in the infirmary. Like I don't, I'm not entirely sure what the plot of that movie was, but anyway, like starting from the early roots of, oh, we were stealing the camcorder and making these home movies like to show to no one, literally, to then the evolution of now I have this YouTube channel. I show myself and my videos to, thousands of creators on a daily basis. And it's just such a cool transformation. So I shared a bit more of like that story in the voiceover. I will also link the reel down below in case you'd like to watch it. I'm so grateful YouTube reached out to me to be part of this campaign. When I read it, I was like, couldn't have asked for a more aligned partnership if I tried. If I didn't say this on here already, align has been my word for 2024. And I really feel like this is a prime example of like the right brand deals do come around when you're creating organic content and authentically talking about the things that you love. And then, as far as what I'm consuming this week, I just watched the first 4 episodes that dropped of the new season of Emily in Paris. I watched them on our flight to Wyoming, which we're going to do a little trip recap later in this episode. So we'll circle back to that. But I watched the first 4 episodes, and here are some of my thoughts, and I've done my best to make sure that these are spoiler free. So I'm pretty sure they are. I'm not planning to like reference anything specifically in this season, but if you want to stay totally in the dark about this season of Emily in Paris, just skip ahead a few minutes. Okay, so first of all, can I just say I personally feel like I could watch 100 seasons of this show. I hope they make 100 seasons of it, even though I don't think that's ever been done for any television show before. I am just obsessed with the format. I love that they're really short episodes. I feel like when Netflix releases so few episodes for a season that they tend to be like 50 minutes or an hour long. No, not here. We are still in like the 30-minute era of television, and I absolutely love that. It just moves so quickly. I don't really remember some of these specific plot points from like seasons 2 and 3. And at the same time, it sort of doesn't matter. Like, I'm getting filled in enough along the way to know that I didn't have to go back and like rewatch the last season or two to remember what happened. But it also sort of doesn't matter because there's like an entirely new drama situation in every single episode. So even if you just happen to turn on the TV, I guess this wouldn't happen for a Netflix show, right? You wouldn't just turn on the TV and be like, oh, Emily in Paris is on, the way that you would for like, oh, I guess this episode of The Office is on, like Comedy Central. I might as well just watch it. Kind of fascinating that we won't have that like experience really with streaming networks. You would have to intentionally go select the show. But anyway, it doesn't matter. The plot is what it is, I just want to watch week to week. I want to see the outfits. I want to see the beautiful shots of Paris. I just want to see the interior of the offices that they work in and the like parties and events that they go to. That's all I want. I'm here mainly for vibes and less for plot, if you know what I mean. Also, as someone who works in marketing, actually, now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure Caitlin and I did a Clubhouse room when Emily in Paris first came out. So this must have been in like 2020 or 2021, where we discussed like the marketing and social media components of Emily in Paris, specifically an event I believe that she went to in season 1 that was sort of like an influencer event or their take on it. It's pretty unrealistic. I would say like maybe 20 to 30% of some of the things they come up with in terms of marketing and their events and their taglines would actually fly in the real world, and then the rest of it is kind of just absurd for dramatic purposes, which I think is totally fine in the context of this show. So this is not really like a plot spoiler as much as just something that happened in one of the episodes I watched regarding one of their clients. This doesn't have anything to do with Emily or her love interests or anyone in particular, but Luke basically comes up with this campaign on the spot to do like a scavenger hunt where the brand account is going to leave clues on social media, and whoever follows the clues and finds the necklace that is hidden gets to keep it. And from what I gather, this is like a very, very luxury jewelry brand that is their client. So, in a sense, he basically says that they're going to like give away, I don't know, a 12,000 euro necklace. And they were like, we don't have the budget for that. And he's like, oh, we're not really going to give it away. We're just going to like give the clues and then no one's ever going to find it. And like that, I don't agree with. I mean, he kind of came up with it on the spot. So he was like stuck with it. But that's just one of those things that like in marketing there's already so many smoke screens, there's already so much like deceptive marketing that is not my favorite thing. So I feel like I maybe could have done without that plot line. I feel like that encourages bad behavior in marketers, but I doubt anyone is watching Emily in Paris with like a serious eye thinking like, oh, instead of going to get a marketing degree, why don't I just watch Emily in Paris to learn what to do? Like, those two things don't really go hand in hand. Also, the fashion collection that is presented, I think, in episode 2, absolutely absurd. Like, no, that was a no for me. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. Like, these people need some new clients, I think. I feel like they could be promoting anyone else, and they always work with like the same 6 accounts, I feel like. Also, Sylvie, I love this woman. Sylvie either needs her own spin-off, which is what I would prefer, or potentially a prequel. And I've been thinking about a Sylvie prequel more and more, especially in light of this season, which again, not going to say exactly what happens, but I feel like we could use more of Sylvie's backstory, but I would need the casting to be spot on. I need someone who is just as Sylvie as the current Sylvie is for this to work, but I feel like it could be incredible. So let's all find whatever online petition that I'm sure someone has started to have a Sylvie spinoff, because I feel like that's what we need next. I feel like that's the natural next trajectory for the Emily in Paris characters. And I feel like we could probably also get one for Mindy, because I would watch that too. I'm just left wondering why, for the second half of these episodes, we're going to Rome. Like, the show is called Emily in Paris. I mean, I love a trip to Rome as much as the next gal, but we could even, she could be like in a different neighborhood in Paris. I'm not going to try to say the neighborhood word because my French is terrible. um you know what I mean. It starts with an A. I'm not going to say it. Maybe she should just move to a different building. Okay, that building that she's in is getting really crowded really quickly. So I feel like even just a change in neighborhood or scenery would do a lot for Emily. But I guess we're going to Rome. So I'm curious to see how the fashion changes, if at all. I don't know anything about the Rome plot. That hasn't even been brought up in the show yet. I've just seen it in the preview for the second batch of episodes that they're going to release in September. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. When I watch those next batch of episodes when they come out, I will be sure to cover that as what I consumed that week in the podcast. So stay tuned. So that is what I've been creating and consuming this past week. I went on a little longer for that segment than I usually do because we're in a chatty episode. We are here for the nuance, we are here to share opinions, and we are here for the full catch up. So I wanted to leave no stone unturned with my initial thoughts, especially for Emily in Paris. But let's get into the rest of the catch up, starting with a little recap of our trip to Wyoming. Last Wednesday, we flew from Newark to Chicago and then Chicago to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where we stayed for 4 days, like 4 full days, because Sunday was basically just a travel day. We had to wake up at 4 a.m. Mountain Time, so that was fun for me. As per usual, I'm a little congested post trip. Honestly, the weather there was a lot more varied and it really dropped and got super cold in the early mornings and the evenings. And then it would get up into like the low 80s during the day. So I just feel like with those temperature extremes, sometimes it's a little hard to avoid just that little bit of congestion. I actually feel much better now that I finally got a good night's sleep last night. So luckily I'm not like sick or anything, but it just was one of those things that adds to the tiredness when you're traveling. So if I sound a little congested, that's why. So we got there on Wednesday. We picked up our rental car and we drove out of the airport. And Jackson Hole Airport is the only airport in the country that is inside of a national park. It is inside of Grand Teton National Park. And driving out of the airport was insane. We were just surrounded by mountains. And we learned that that's what Jackson Hole is actually named for because it's basically the hole in the center of mountain ranges on all four sides of it. So that's where the name comes from. And it was just so beautiful driving into the downtown. It honestly reminded me a little bit of Boulder, Colorado. It reminded me a little bit also of a town we went to in New Zealand called Wanaka. That was possibly Andrew and my favorite stop on our trip in New Zealand. It was just the most beautiful town. And that's where we did our wine tasting that I have raved about in our New Zealand honeymoon vlog and in the blog post I wrote about our trip. So it's just like crazy to be in this cute town and then look up and just be surrounded by mountains. It's really beautiful and obviously something that we don't really experience in New Jersey. Oh my gosh, you guys, this is a funny little side story. But so we arrived at, I guess, 11 a.m. Mountain Time, and our Airbnb check in time wasn't until 4. And there is a road from Jackson that leads into Idaho that was only like a 40-minute drive. And I was like, guys, what if, because who knows when I'm going to plan a trip to Idaho, right? I was like, what if when we land, we go have lunch in Idaho and then we'll get to like do two states in one. And we could go to this brewery that I found in a small town, basically like 15 minutes over the border into Idaho. So that would count, right? I am on a not like quick mission. I'm kind of on like a lifelong mission to hopefully visit all 50 states at some point. So Wyoming was state 28 for me. And I was like, how awesome would it be if we also checked off Idaho? Have this whole plan. We start driving on the road out there, and then we realize that the road is closed. Like, and there's no alternate route that doesn't take like 3 hours to get to where we wanted to go. It was kind of like this road or nothing because once again, you're in the mountains, so you're a little limited on the road options. And so the road was closed. I couldn't tell exactly what it was closed for. I noticed there were some road closures around where we were due to forest fires. There was also an avalanche kind of near that road not that long ago, earlier this year. So for whatever reason, we weren't able to cross the border and go to Idaho. I know, very disappointing, but we turned around and went back towards town and ended up getting lunch at Snake River Brewing Company, which was so good. It was such a cute space. They had this outdoor area with Adirondack chairs and picnic tables and stuff like that. I tried two different beers there. They were both really good. I'm a big beer gal, if you haven't picked up on that yet. So this was very exciting for me. We also got to go to two other breweries in Jackson as well. The other one was called Still West Brewing Company, and it was right by, I believe it's called the Snow King Mountain or the Snow King Resort. You can look it up in Jackson. It's basically like the main mountain that you can ski down that is like right in the town. So I'm sure in the winter, this is a hugely popular destination for anyone who likes to ski or snowboard. And we were literally seated outside on the balcony of the brewery, and it just overlooked the mountain. We could see the gondolas going up and down. Someone said that they did like summer concerts up there, like during, the off season. Obviously, no one was skiing in August. And me and Andrew and Cindy were trying to speculate, like, oh, maybe there's a wedding up there or like a rehearsal dinner or something. We ended up going there on Thursday night. Sorry, I don't think I even said this. So I went to Wyoming with Andrew and my mother-in-law, Cindy, and really we decided to take this trip. Number one, Cindy is a teacher, so she had off until next week when her school starts back up again. And we really wanted to do a trip with her to a national park somewhere. As you guys know, I think my father-in-law passed away in March of this year, and it was really their retirement dream to, drive in their RV to a bunch of national parks all across the country. And so this was kind of just a small way to help, my mother-in-law realize that dream in some ways. And hopefully there will be many more national parks and trips in the future. So that's kind of why we decided to take this trip. It's really just something that was really meaningful to me, and I know to her and Andrew, obviously, as well, to be able to go and experience these places in person. They were both so stunningly beautiful. So we got to go to Grand Teton National Park and also Yellowstone. And I know my father in law would have loved both of those places. They were just so insanely pretty. It's obviously like nothing that we really have around here. I think the closest national park to us is Acadia National Park in Maine, or maybe, no, probably not. Maybe there's something like in northern North Carolina, but I would assume Maine is closer. So, anyway, that's sort of what prompted the trip. We were thinking of him the whole time, and it kind of felt like he was there with us in spirit. So, that was obviously really nice. Since we were staying right in Jackson, we were able to drive to Grand Teton National Park. I'm saying Teton, and I think we established that it's Teton. I don't know why I just want to like flatten the second T. I just want to make it Teton, but it might be Teton. So I'm going to try to say Teton. And if you know the correct thing and I'm saying the wrong thing, that's my bad. So because we were staying right in Grand Teton National Park, we were like a 15-minute drive from a lot of the main entrances and hikes that you can do. We woke up early on Thursday morning and drove our rental car to Jenny Lake. We were able to catch a ferry across the lake, which was not only really cool, but it also saved us walking 2 miles around the lake to the start of the trail that we were going to do. So that was very helpful because I don't know if I would have made it if we walked around the lake to the starting point of the trailhead and then went up the mountain. Actually, I'm pretty confident that I wouldn't have made it. I believe the name of the trail we did was Cascade Canyon. So we walked up to Cascade Canyon and Inspiration Point, one of which was a viewpoint that overlooked kind of the mountain and the lake area, and the other one had a waterfall at it. And a lot of people kind of do that hike with their kids. It's maybe like 40 minutes ish, and then they turn around. But we decided to keep going. Andrew chose this hike because once you got more into the main part of the park, you came across just the most beautiful like body of water where the mountains and the pine trees were all directly reflected in the water. It was truly one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. We ended up hiking 3 miles in and 3 miles back for a total of 6 miles. So that is officially the longest hike that I have ever done. I'm proud of myself for making it through. I didn't cry at all, which is pretty good. And we packed lots of water. Andrew told me to bring a second water bottle, which was definitely a good idea. And I also packed a bunch of Kind granola bars for us. So once we got basically to the halfway point of the hike, we stopped by that beautiful waterfront view, that like reflective view, and we had some granola bars before we kept going along our way. So it was an out and back trail. So we popped in and then we went back the exact same way that we came out. Oh, and I know I'm jumping around here, but I just wanted to mention the third brewery that we went to in Jackson. It was called Roadhouse Brewing Company. And we tried to go there Friday night, but they were actually like booked for a private event. So we ended up going there Saturday. And that was really good too. I only got one beer there because I was feeling, like I said, a little bit of congestion. I didn't really want to make it worse. So I just got their hazy IPA. It was called the Walrus. Hard to forget a name like that. And I got this prosciutto flatbread that was also really good. For some reason, I just kept ordering flatbreads on this trip. Like when I'm at a brewery, I just want something that's easy to eat. And for some reason, that was just my go-to. I also got a flatbread or like a mini pizza. I forget what they called it at the Snake River Brewing Company. And it was like the perfect companion, you know? Pizza and beer is a hard combination to mess with. So Thursday was the day we did the Jenny Lake hike and that we ate at Still West Brewing Company. And then Friday morning, we also had a pretty early start because we booked a full day tour of Yellowstone. Now, I would really strongly recommend this if you are planning a trip to Jackson and you want to see Yellowstone, just because it is a pretty long drive there and back. It's about 2 hours from Jackson to like any of the main sites in Yellowstone. So 2 hours there, 2 hours back, trying to figure out where to park, dealing with national park fees and stuff like that. All of that was covered and included in the tour that we did. They also gave us breakfast, which we ate on the bus on the way there, and lunch, which we stopped at Yellowstone Lake to eat our sandwiches, which was honestly perfect. I'm sure we could have hacked together a plan to see Yellowstone on our own, but they said Yellowstone spans like 10,000 square miles or something like that. So it's obviously massive. It's kind of hard to figure out what exactly are the most important things to see or the top sites. We were getting a little overwhelmed, and I know we were looking at the planning, and we just decided let's like use an expert, a local guide who knows all of this stuff, who does this every day, and just book that. So that's what we did. Our tour guide, Ben, was great. He also pointed out lots of like wildlife along the way. I saw an antelope, I saw a moose, I saw lots of bison, and we also got to see a ton of different sites within Yellowstone. If you look at a map of Yellowstone of where you can drive throughout the park, it almost looks like a number 8. So we did the lower loop of the park. That was also the part that was closer to Jackson. The other northern loop of the park is closer to Montana's border. So we did the lower loop. We got to see Old Faithful. That's the geyser that goes off like every 90 minutes. So that's why it gets its name, because it's pretty reliable to know when it's going to go off. That was very cool to see. But my favorite part of the park was definitely Artist's Point, which is basically like the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. There is an insane view that is just like a straight shot of a beautiful waterfall in a canyon from this viewpoint. I'll actually put it on the Instagram for this week's episode because you guys have to take a look at it. It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, truly. I'm super glad we booked that tour. It ended up just being 7 people in total, including the 3 of us. So it was very intimate. We were on like a nice small bus, and we got picked up and dropped off right in the center of Jackson, which was about like a 15-minute walk from our Airbnb. So that was super cool. And we also did some other Western activities while we were there. So Saturday, I was calling it like our cowboy day. So we actually did horseback riding in the morning, which I owe Andrew an apology for this. So, Andrew, if you're listening, sorry. Because I was questioning his decision to book this horseback riding that was like 45 minutes away from where we were staying. I had a friend who had recommended one that was like 15 minutes from where we were staying and that was cheaper. And I was like, shouldn't we just like do that one? And then we could have more time in the town or more time to do things. And he was like, no, no, like I looked, this is like the best rated one. It's going to be really cool. And I was like, okay. The, I was, thank God we did that one because I was completely wrong, probably. I mean, maybe the other one would have been fine, but this trail that we did was absolutely insane. Riding the horse and just looking up and seeing the mountains up in the distance, it it was absolutely crazy. I put some photos on my Instagram of this as well, and it was just truly unbelievable. Like we kept looking around going, this doesn't look real, it's so beautiful here. So I would definitely look into that if you're going to Jackson as well. And then later that day, we stopped by the $1 Million Cowboy Bar, which is, you can't miss it if you're driving through Jackson. Like it has its name up in lights. There is a giant cowboy on a horse, like rotating sign on top of it. It's literally impossible not to see when you're there. And when you go in, the bar stools are saddles. Like they really lean into the Western theme there. And it seemed like a great time. Apparently, they also had live music later in the evening. We didn't get a chance to experience that because Saturday night, we actually went to the rodeo. So now, if someone ever invites me again to a rodeo, I can say, oh, this is not my first rodeo. Although, I'm not going to lie, you guys, I think the rodeo was like a one and done experience for me personally. I don't know. There's just something about it that I didn't totally love. First of all, I don't understand how these people don't just constantly have broken bones, or maybe they do. And secondly, I'm just going off of what I saw. It doesn't really seem like the best environment for the animals either. So it was interesting, but I think I get it. Uh, I saw it. I came. I saw. I just sat there. I didn't conquer, but I think I'm good on the rodeo for probably ever. Overall, we just had so much fun on this trip. It was so unique and unlike any trip I've ever taken before. So I will probably have a vlog up with footage from this trip in a few weeks. So stay tuned for that on my YouTube channel. So that was the main thing I wanted to catch you up on was our trip. And now I kind of have a little grab bag of different topics that I wrote down that I thought would be good to catch up with you all about / discuss. Okay, so number 1, I know I titled this episode End of Summer Recap. And that is because in my mind, September 1st is fall. And I know not everyone feels this way. So I wanted to discuss when is the start of fall. And I have seen so much discussion about this, mainly on threads, which I want to circle back to threads in a little bit. But about whether or not like certain months mark the start of a new season or whether you actually go by the literal fall equinox or the first day of summer that is like officially in our calendar, because if we're going off of that, the start of fall is September 22nd, which conceptually like I sort of get, but at the same time there's so much that happens right at the beginning of September that clearly marks the start of fall to me personally. The first thing being that a lot of people go back to school. At least in New Jersey and New York City, where I grew up in the tri state area, I feel like school just generally starts the day after Labor Day, which in this case would be next Tuesday. So that to me is like, okay, guys, I mean, you can say it's still summer if you want, but like if you're in school during the summer months, that doesn't totally make sense in my brain, if you know what I mean. Also, my birthday is September 3rd, which is next week. Very exciting. And to me, in my head, I have a fall birthday, even though I understand that I have a summer birthday, but it always just felt like the start of a new season. And I think that has a lot to do with back to school growing up. It was okay. Like, we're back in school, we're back in action, another year older. Like, it seems like someone hit the reset button on the seasons and that we switched to fall. So that is just a debate that I've been seeing people having online. I don't mean to be rushing summer either by any means. Obviously, I love summer, but looking back on this past summer, I just can't believe how much we've done, all the places we've traveled. Like, I'm really ready for a stay at home, cozy fall vibe, which I want to do a whole separate fall episode. So I won't dwell on this too much, but let me know if you are a person who feels like fall starts September 1st, or if you feel like fall starts on the day that it officially starts, which is like September 22nd. This actually became not a like full on debate, but like a topic of discussion when we were trying to choose the date that we were getting married last year. Because last year, the start of fall actually fell on September 23rd, and one of the dates our venue would have been available was September 22nd. And this like is so not important, but it was just something that I was thinking of. I was like, but Andrew, I really want to have like a fall wedding. And if we got married September 22nd of that last year in 2023, it technically wouldn't have been fall. It would have been summer still. But then this year, it would be the first day of fall. So we ended up getting married on September 29th, which I'm going to do a wedding recap for our anniversary, so stay tuned for that later in September. Anyway, I just think the seasonality and where it really starts and where it really ends to people is just so funny and like such an interesting topic of discussion. So I want to know your thoughts too. In last week's episode for creating, I told you guys I launched my Etsy shop, and I just wanted to give you like a little 2 week update, which is that I've actually made some sales, which is exciting. My first sale was actually my friend Miranda. She purchased the wedding planning template for two of her friends who are getting married. So, two of her friends recently got engaged and are planning their weddings. So, she downloaded the template for them. And she's also been sending me like feedback from them, what they think of it too. And I love knowing that it's already helping real people get organized for their weddings. But beyond that, I've actually made a handful of sales, which is really exciting. They kind of just like pop up in my email. It will be like Etsy transaction, like this person just purchased your template. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so great. Like, I love to see that. So I will keep you guys updated on my progress there. But right now, I just launched with these two products. So I'm hoping to add some new products as we head into, I guess, the fall, whether you think that's starting next week or whether you think that's starting on September 22nd. But I'm excited to continue to kind of grow that section of my business too. I think it's going to be a really great addition to what I'm already doing. And I'm super excited to see where it takes me. Okay, I wanted to circle back on threads now because I have just been spending more and more time on this platform. So if you're not familiar, which you're probably pretty digitally inclined if you listen to this podcast, so you probably are, but if you're not super familiar, Instagram launched Threads last year to be their Twitter competitor, or X. We're just going to call it Twitter for purposes of my sanity. And I have just really been enjoying it because I have been on Twitter for a long time, since 2009, I want to say, which is honestly probably too long. I Who knows what's out there on Twitter. I should just like delete my whole account and start over from scratch. But I liked Twitter originally because it felt like a place to go to kind of like envision you're texting a group chat, but it's sort of like a group chat of all different types of people while things are happening. So I loved checking it during, when there was breaking news, or when we were all watching an event together, like The Bachelor, or the Super Bowl, or the Oscars, whatever it was. Twitter was always the place to go just for the commentary. And as you guys know, I love the commentary. I listen to so many pop culture recap podcasts of TV shows and things like that. That was one of the big reasons I loved Twitter. And then in my time as a magazine editor and a freelance writer, it was also a fantastic place to connect and network with other journalists and editors. It still is. I want to say, I feel like there are that core group of people who are still pretty active on Twitter. And I always try to repost calls for pitches when I see them and follow editors who I'm interested in. So I feel like Twitter kind of became that. But now with Threads, it's almost like everyone I followed on Instagram who I wish they posted more on Twitter is actually posting on Threads. So it's almost like the Twitter experience, but with a group of people who I feel like we're missing from the Twitter experience. I also had access to the Threads bonus last month. I hit the first tier of it, which actually paid me $75, which for posting on Threads, I mean, that's not terrible. I could have gone up to $500, but it basically pays you out depending on how many views different threads that you post get. I kind of realized partway through that one way to get those views up on threads is obviously to create great original content, like your own threads that people want to engage with and share. But another way to do it was to engage on really trending popular posts on threads too. So I've kind of been doing a mix of those two things. I'm trying to set aside like 15 minutes a day to kind of go on threads and engage with different people on there, like different things. I've kind of been on a few different varieties of threads lately, like podcast threads, bachelorette threads, just lots of little different mini pockets of the internet. And that's really what I like about it so far. And I've also connected with a few new people on there, which is always cool. It feels like easier to do right now than even go comment on people's Instagrams. I feel like people are actually a bit more active and responsive on threads, if that makes sense. So come join me on threads if you are on there. My handle is Austen Tosone, the same as it is everywhere. I might save this one actually more for the fall episode, but I'm feeling like a fall declutter is coming on. The bins that sit next to me with all of the beauty products that are so kindly sent to me by brands that I absolutely love are here for me to test, and yet they're sitting in this bin and I'm not testing them. So what that means is I need to go through my products in the bathroom, get rid of any empties, anything that's expired, or anything I'm just not using. Really do a clear out over there so I can make room for these new products that I do want to test to be front and center in the bathroom where I'm actually going to be using them, and not sitting next to me here where they are nice to look at, but I can't tell you how I feel about a moisturizer just from a glance. You can't judge a book by its cover. You got to actually take it for a test drive, read a couple pages, open the jar. And to wrap up the episode, I thought I'd just share briefly what I'm planning to do for my 30th birthday, which is literally next week. So, first of all, we did my big celebration already, which was going to the Eras tour. That was very much like, this is the 30th birthday present. This is the first anniversary present. This is a gift to ourselves for basically the entire year. So I'm not doing anything too crazy. I basically texted a bunch of friends and asked if they wanted to meet up at a brewery one weekend in September. So it's a very low key affair. People can come for just a drink, they could come hang out for a few hours, whatever floats their boat. So that is basically what I'm doing. I just like having birthday plans that are low key for pretty much everyone involved, myself included. So not doing like a fancy dinner or anything. I would love to throw a fancy dinner party for myself for a future birthday, but I feel like I would either want to like host and coordinate that myself or be able to treat my friends because I know that those things can add up. I've been to many a birthday dinner before where I'm like, how bad could this be, really? And then, like, $250 later, I'm like, oh, that's how bad it could be. And it's no one's fault. It's just the cost of, a fancy meal out in New York City and, gratuity and all that stuff. So I see that for myself in the future. But honestly, at 30, and I want to do a whole episode probably next week about turning 30, life lessons, just things that I've learned and things that I are important to me at this point in my life. And right now, what's important to me is just having the opportunity to hang out with my friends, relax for a little bit, and just do something that makes me happy. So that is all I really want for my birthday this year. And I did actually message Karia though to do some photos. So I'm going to go into the city and do those later this week. My mom got me this t-shirt that says in my 30s era. So we are planning a whole photo shoot around that, of course. So stay tuned for that birthday episode next week. And I think that just about fills you in on everything that I've been up to in the last few weeks and some of the things I've been thinking about lately. So if you guys did listen to this one, thank you so much. I know that it's less topical and more just a catch up, but that is one of my goals with this podcast is to get more connected with you guys, share more with you, and in return, please continue to share more with me as well. I would love to know what you think about threads. I would love to know if you have an Etsy shop, what you think about the start of fall, and if you would ever plan a trip to Jackson Hole. So please connect with me and stay in touch. As a reminder, you can support Create and Consume for free by doing any of the following. You can leave Apple and Spotify ratings and reviews. You can like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you're watching here on YouTube. You can follow along at Create and Consume Pod on Instagram and TikTok. You could send this episode to a friend who might enjoy it. And don't forget, you can check out episode recaps and more at createandconsumepodcast.com. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.